Welcome to episode 154 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by Allied Solutions. With over 40 years of experience in the financial service industry, Allied helps more than 4,000 clients grow or enhance their bottom line, protect their business and consumers, and evolve to stay ahead of the competition. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com. The show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement that make it so great. And sometimes, like today, we bring in people from outside the community as well. I'm having a conversation today with Diana Kander. Diana is I'm going to say self-proclaimed innovation nerd. So sure. I don't want to call you a nerd right off the get-go, but I read that on your website and absolutely loved it. A New York Times bestselling author, a consultant who works with boards and executive committees on innovation best practices and cultural transformation. She's also, which I'm extremely excited about, the keynote for our next CUInsight Mini-Con event that's coming up. So let's just jump right in. Diana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much.
As I said before we hit record, I was excited to have this conversation from doing a little bit of homework. So I would love to just start with a little bit of background for our listeners today. Can you tell us a little about your story and how'd you get to where you are today doing what you do?
Absolutely. I'll go way back. When I was 8 years old, I moved to the United States. I was a refugee from the Soviet Union. I was actually born in Odessa, Ukraine.
Oh,
and
geez.
We left in the middle of the night with nothing. You know, my family we had my parents, my grandma, and me. We had a suitcase per person, $256 to our name. And my parents left having no idea where they were going, speaking no English, and they knew so little about the circumstances. One of our 4 suitcases was like half packed with just toilet paper. Like, that's how little we knew about what was in store.
Where you were going, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were so fortunate to get to come to the United States and to establish a life here. And for me, like, that was the ultimate curiosity initiative. You know, like, we knew nothing about how anything worked. And because I knew so little and everybody around me kind of knew how things worked, I was able to really test some core assumptions that a lot of people operated under and actually make some leapfrogs ahead of others. So, like, when I was in high school, I didn't just get a job. I figured out that you could make like 4 times as much money as a server as you could as a retail job, right? So I was like, well, I'll take one of those. Yeah. And when I went to college, I was trying to figure out how to get the most credit for the least amount of money. You know, I had conserve my resources. So I found every loophole at this 4-year university to get credits and was able to finish in 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah. And to get all the credit. So, you know, it just really taught me, starting way at the bottom, that when you test assumptions and you don't take for granted how things work, that you could really go fast. And I've applied that to my career as an entrepreneur and now as an author and a consultant, and hopefully helping other organizations do the same thing.
To move fast. Yeah, you made it through college a lot quicker than I did. That's for sure. I took the opposite approach. It took 5 years. So I'm curious about curiosity. Like, when I was doing a little bit of research, the line curiosity as the catalyst for exponential growth
yes,
sparked my attention. But if we take a step back, do you think, or did your curiosity come from, I mean, can you trace that all the way back to you being 8 years old and coming over? And
it's about making space for those questions. You know, For me, curiosity is the space between what you currently know and what you don't know. And I feel like so many of us, we come to work every day with a to-do list. We know everything we need to know. All we need to do is check things off. And we don't have space for that really, really foundational, like, opportunity to look at our day and not say, am I doing this as efficiently as I can, but am I doing the right things? And that's where you get the opportunity for exponential growth, not just linear growth, when you can say, oh, I could go 10 times faster if I just stopped doing this thing or took on this new initiative. That's where that comes from.
You're using one of my favorite words that I think about all the time and try to create, and that is the word space.
Yes.
So I know, like for me personally, I have to create that. I have a morning routine that I need to create that space where I allow myself to think. It's when I do my best thinking is early. And so that's something that I'm very intentional about. For the person out there who woke up this morning, they're listening to this, they have their checklist. Any hacks, I guess, that on creating that space to be able to think bigger?
Well, I'm excited to bring a number of hacks to the CU Insights event where I'll teach them how you can actually just switch up the questions that you're asking yourself on a daily basis and to create that space. And I'll give an example that we won't talk about during the event. But by asking questions, that's the best way to create that event. And one example is whenever we launch an initiative, whether it's a success or not, there are things that could be improved that could help us go faster next time. But we assume that if it wasn't a failure, that 100% of it was successful. We just assume that everything was done correctly, even though there's probably 30 or 40% of the things that we did that didn't go as well as we had expected or could be done even better. And so by giving ourselves the opportunity to say, okay, I launched this and it worked well, but what could I have done better? We allow ourselves to grow faster and faster. So after every keynote, I make space for myself immediately after, like I have an appointment with someone within an hour after the keynote to go over slide by slide everything that I said and what could go better. And, I deliver a lot of these keynotes and I've been doing it for so many years, but I will tell you, I get a page full of do-betters every single time. And that's how you create exponential improvement by growing, 1 or 2% after every rep.
Every time you do it. That's pretty amazing. I wanted to ask you about blind spots. That was something I was either watching one of your talk that you did, or maybe I listened to a podcast you're on too. And it got me thinking, credit unions in general, it's what's called a mature industry. With success, or when we've done something well, does that create more blind spots for us almost? Because we're like, we already know how to do this, I guess. So how do you, for let's say an established leader, an established organization, how do you get past those blind spots? How do you keep the curiosity going to, I guess, keep being successful or more successful?
Absolutely. I had an incredible interview once. I interviewed the founder of the digital camera at Kodak, Steve Sasson, and he said that expertise is knowing the limits of what's currently possible. So when we're experts, we understand where the limits are, so we are unlikely to break through those limits. And it is being able to say, okay, I know a lot about this topic, but how can I see it through brand new eyes? How can I ask new employees into my organization which things that we do don't make any sense to them? Or like how we could be improving certain things that were working? Because even though you know this business really well, the world around your business is changing at a faster and faster pace than ever before. So the facts are changing all around you.
That brings me to another question. Like we've seen in financial services, but I think it's every place, right? Like that innovation and, the speed of change is quick, right? Like, it's just our whole world, the way that we do things 10 years ago is non-existent, right? I guess when we're looking at things, one of my frustrations, I guess, that I see out there is when people maybe are slow to innovate, slow to change, they bring something to the table. Quite honestly, it should be table stakes at this point, right? So like, how do we, like as an organization, we don't always have to be the first one to do something, but how are we maybe fast followers when it comes to innovation as well?
Don't let innovation happen to you, Be an organization that is constantly thinking about improving no matter what others are doing. I think that so many times we are focused on like a view inside our own world, and we're able to slow each other down by saying, well, none of the other credit unions are worried about this yet, instead of thinking about our customers and what they're asking for and what they're demanding. And when your focus is on your customers and how you can be improving for them, you'll end up changing much faster than others around you. It doesn't mean you have to be the first, but just by not taking the focus off the customers, you'll always be finding opportunities to innovate.
That brings me to a question. A lot of people that listen to the podcast tend to be senior leaders in credit unions. There's been, like many industries, a lot of turnover that's happened, whole group retiring and, younger leaders coming in for the first time. If, let's say you walk into an organization day one, the board's hired you because they want to innovate, they want to change, they want to grow. Is there something from a culture standpoint to bring you're not getting a whole brand new team. Existing people are in the organization. Is there, I guess, best practices or hacks that you found along the way to help bring others along too? Many people are afraid of change, right? Or uncomfortable. Let's just.
Well, this is one of the things that we'll be talking about during the event, but every organization has what I call zombie initiatives. These are projects that are slowing down the organization. These are things that take more time and effort to do than the value that they're creating for your credit union. And I promise you, there are people inside your organization that don't believe in some of the things that they're working on. They're saying, like, why are we going to these meetings? I don't see the purpose of this initiative. And the first thing I would do is not start anything, but stop things that are slowing us down and really preventing us from the kind of growth that we would want for our organizations.
That is, I speak from personal experience, a tough thing to do, right? Like to kind of take the snapshot of the entire business and say, why do we still do that? I mean, whether it's my company or, a credit union out there, we all have limited resources. So what you're saying makes just the zombie initiatives. I like that a lot. What questions should leaders be asking? Is there something that we should always, like you mentioned, kind of doing the check of yourself after you do a keynote? Are there questions that leaders should continually be asking themselves about their organization?
About their organization or about themselves as leaders? I would say, never take the gas pedal off focusing on customers. And as a leader, you should be eating customer feedback for breakfast every morning. There should be some kind of feedback loop where you get direct access to hear what customers are complaining about or saying. So, because every layer that is between you and direct language from customers, people are saying it nicer to the manager above them. So if you're getting a report that was generated for somebody, they're going to be like, everything is awesome. And if I was a leader of a credit union and I got, one of the things you get is like super high satisfaction scores. And like we are maintaining our customer base to a very high degree. And that kind of stuff would make me paranoid. If all I got was good news, I would say this does not give me any useful information for how to innovate our products and services. And I know that there are dissatisfied people. We just aren't asking the right questions to get them to share those points of view.
I think you make an interesting point, because if you think of the, say, CEO or somebody in the C-suite who's listening today, chances are they're not the ones who daily are dealing with the members. That's the frontline teller, let's just say, or member service person out there, right? Like who is actually hearing that. So when that feedback is watered down by the time it makes it to the C-suite, is there, I guess, advice on how to make sure that the person who's in the corner office is still getting the, I guess, unfiltered feedback from the member?
Well, number one, it's about thinking about the kinds of questions that you're asking through your surveys that are going to get you something deeper than like, yeah, everything's good. It's like, when you go to a restaurant and a manager comes by and they're like, hey, everything good? You guys having a great time? Okay, see ya. And even if you had a complaint, you wouldn't say like, wait, let me tell you about the little things I don't like. But if instead the manager came down, like stopped at your table and was like, hey, we're thinking about expanding this concept. Is there anything that you would improve about your experience today for future customers? You'd be like, oh, well, now that I think you really care and are listening, here's some ideas of things that could be better. And so the way that we ask the question will determine the kinds of responses we get. And as a leader, how can I get access to some kind of a stream? I know an executive at a credit union that sees all of the like employee complaints, on Glassdoor and responds to every single one, that they respond to every single customer complaint on other like online forums. They seek out that information and they're going to have a much richer wealth of knowledge. Plus, how cool is it when you get access to the executive of a credit union and they care about what you think. Like that just creates a culture inside your credit union and outside that you really are all about the community.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to ask you this. You work with a lot of boards as well in your consulting business. And, as a credit union leader, they have a board of directors that they're responsible to. I guess any best practices that you've found over your career in now, instead of bringing the employees along, right, and getting the buy-in, also the flip side of that, making sure that the board buys in too, because in the end, that's who's, going to judge the success of the organization, right? So.
A lot of my work takes place around innovation. And one of the challenges from boards is that they don't understand that innovation projects can't be measured the same way as standard initiatives. And so setting the stakes up front, that this is the investment that we're making, this is the period of how we're going to judge it, and this is how we're going to make sure we're going in the right direction, and that this is a worthwhile change, will really help them from getting antsy and say, like, why are we spending on these innovation initiatives and what are we getting for them that we won't see for a couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great point. Can I ask you, if it is tougher to, I guess measure, right? Not like the same as like we increased lending or something, but like how, when we're looking at creating new value, when we're looking at innovation to create new value for our members, for the whether employees, for the credit union as a whole, like what should we be? I guess there's that idea of like, if you don't measure it, you're not going to, know what you're. So, is there something? Is there a way to measure?
Yeah, so the challenge is that most of our initiatives, we set out these success metrics that won't happen for a number of years, and we don't really measure anything until we get there. But on innovation products, when, the future is unsure, we're not really sure if this is going to work, what we need to measure, I call pivot indicators or failure metrics. These are the opposite of success metrics. So how would we know if this initiative really was going to bomb? And what's beautiful about these pivot indicators is that you can tell much faster. So it might take you 3 years to know whether you're being successful or not. You can find out in 4 months if this is even headed in the right direction. And usually an initiative will start and then it won't go the way that we anticipated. And so we're stuck being like, oh my God, should we keep throwing money at this thing? Like, is it ever going to work? And the best way to avoid that kind of fate is by upfront saying, how would we know if it isn't working? And when would we know that? What are those things that we will measure to give us an indication that we should just change tracks? Because when you're dealing with an initiative that is just an unknown, we might have to pivot a couple of times until we get it right.
Yeah, I know killing a project is something that I've struggled with in my career.
But give yourself enough. If you don't give yourself room to make those shifts and pivots, then you're going to spend all of your resources, all of your runway on version 1. But if you look at any successful startup, their success, like any huge company, it wasn't the business plan that was successful. It was the 8th iteration of something in the original idea that they found that they had time and resources to invest in. So save your time and resources by measuring these pivot indicators.
So you've worked with a lot of startups as well. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's kind of this very broad question, but like what makes a good leader today or a good CEO today? It seems to me that that's different than, say, the Jack Welch books that we were reading a couple decades ago, right? So you work with not only startups, but many established companies as well. In today's world, today's day and age, what makes a good leader today?
I think understanding the power of their words. When a CEO says something, it doesn't carry the same weight as when somebody else does. And I was working with his executive who told me this amazing story that it was a trucking company. And one day he was walking through the truck yards with somebody who worked for him. And he remarked about how dirty the trucks seemed. And the next month he gets a bill for $40,000 for washing the entire fleet. And he's like, what is this? What happened? And somebody said, you said that the trucks were dirty and we should wash them. And he said, I didn't. I said no such thing. I just said, no, they're dirty. And so understand that not just about the fleet, but when you're at a meeting and you share your opinion or your thought or idea, that carries so much more weight. So if you could be the kind of leader that reserves those thoughts and ideas for last, that doesn't put that 10-pound weight on the table and expect people to challenge their ideas, but, can hold it back enough to allow other people to share their ideas, you're really going to nurture people coming up with, improving ways to work in a way that they wouldn't if you were to speak first.
I think you make a really interesting point there. So many of the CEOs who have been on this podcast talk about creating that space where other senior leaders can give honest feedback, right? And then people can fail, like in the organization as well, right? And not worry about their job or whatever it happens to be. I guess thoughts on how to create that space. Like a lot of the feedback we get on the podcast is from people that are fairly new in the roles. They're listening to other CEOs to try to gain some insight. Do you have thoughts that you could share, I guess, on how to create that space in the boardroom, in the office where you are the CEO, your voice carries more weight, as you just said, but that you make others, I guess, or allow others to feel safe to voice their opinion and know that it's valued as well?
Yeah, well, one of the things you could do is just not say anything. That's the easy one, but a very, very difficult thing for a CEO to do. I think an easy hack that anybody can use is to do an anonymous 360 feedback survey of the people that you regularly meet with and just ask that question. What could I do to create a safer environment for people to share? And they're going to tell you exactly what you can do at your specific credit union and in your specific meetings. And then it's up to you to follow their advice or ignore it.
A couple just last questions on leadership. Often, again, in an established industry, it's kind of that idea of like, this is the way we've always done it. And then, as a leader, I think whether it's a team member or a board member, we've all had to deal with those folks that kind of think their way is the only way and the right way. Any, I guess, thoughts there on changing the mindset, steering the ship so that it is a more innovative organization, one that continues to grow and stay relevant? I think relevancy is a huge thing, obviously, in the space that we're in. So any thoughts there?
I found that I can't create an innovative new product or service without myself changing. And if you want to change your organization, if you want to do something innovative, start with yourself as the leader and demonstrate something that you're improving about yourself. It will improve the products and services of your organization. I think too often we feel like there is some kind of a level inside of an organization that we can attain where we can stop our continuing education. And like even at the board level, people think you can get to a board and you can stop learning. But actually, you are so far removed from the customers that you have so much more learning to do to get back in touch with all of that frontline service and interaction. So I think you have to work extra hard as a leader of an organization to understand what it feels like to do business with your credit union.
Okay, so this is completely a 100% scratch my own itch question that just came up because while you were talking here, by nature, I think myself as being a curious person. It's the reason I love travel. It's probably why I'm an entrepreneur as well. Just that idea. When we're looking to add to our team, how do we find other curious people? It seems like it'd be glorious to have a team full of people with a high degree of curiosity.
Yeah. Well, you can ask. Curious people do a number of things. Number one, they are constantly learning about cool and interesting things. So you could ask them about the last time that they, big thing that they learned about or what they're currently learning. Number two, I think they set big, ambitious goals for themselves. Like the curiosity goes in a specific point. And so allowing them to share those things that they're really excited about in their personal life. So I'm trying to do the splits for the first time. I'm 41, trying to do the splits for the first time in my life. I wasn't even close, And so I want to see if I can use the skills of curiosity to accomplish big physical feats every year. But it's fun to chat about. I think, curiosity leaves clues in a person's life. So just find those little clues. And the second thing I would say is once you hire a curious person, you have to take care not to destroy it within that person, because there's only going to be a couple of times when they come up with ideas and you say, no, we're not really interested in that they will learn to stop coming up with ideas. And so how do you preserve that sense of curiosity and reward it inside your organization? I think that's a real challenge.
This is a broader question and a little bit of a pivot, but I think many, including credit unions, the view of what work looks like and what a career in credit unions, and I think in most companies, changed over the past few years, right? Like, we are an industry by nature that was like, there's no such thing as work from home. You have to be in the branch or whatever it happens to be. Now that more people out there don't view work as just like some physical location, what do you think, I guess, for like a career, whether it's in credit unions or a Fortune 500 company, looks like as we move forward? Has that changed over the past few years?
I think about continuously gaining skills inside your career in a way that makes you a huge resource to this credit union or wherever you go next. So, work is hard on your own skill set. This is old Jim Rohn quote. Work is hard on yourself as you do at your job. And you will forever be employable and able to advance up.
Jill, my fiance, works in credit unions also. She's in the people side of the business on the consulting. And we've recently been having this conversation around the idea of like when a board's hiring somebody or they're looking at like on the list of requirements, like the college degree, the 4-year degree. And, one of the things that with how fast things are changing, it's this idea of like, is that really as important as like what you're saying, the person who's constantly developing new skills? What I learned in college 20 years ago is not, I mean, if I just sat there, it's probably not as relevant today as some of the other stuff I picked up along the way. Do you have thoughts on that when we're looking at hiring leaders? Are you looking for experience? Should we be looking for something other than just checking boxes, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, you don't want people checking boxes inside your organization. You want people accomplishing outcomes. And so focusing the conversation around outcomes and the exact role that person played in that outcome, not just that they were, around a place that this happened, but exactly what they did and what lessons how they reflected on that situation, what lessons they took on that, how they applied it to the next thing that they did. Understanding that kind of thinking inside of an individual will help you find somebody who loves to learn and improve with every position.
I agree with you there. One last kind of big question here on innovation, very blimp level. I apologize for that, but it's kind of in my head. One of the things that I noticed in credit unions over the past few years is the idea that like we couldn't move fast. It kind of got thrown out the window, right? Like, because we could when we had to, but we all have limited resources. So when we're looking at innovation, when we're looking at moving the bar forward, there are so many choices. How do we make sure that we're making the right choice strategically at the right time? And I would go back to something that you talked on earlier. How do we make sure that, if it's a 3-year initiative, but a year into the plan, we need to pivot in a completely different direction because something new came up, that we're not, I guess, just chasing shiny objects, but yet we're still, moving in the right direction too, with the information that we have at the time.
I think about constraints as a gift. I think that if your organization had $100 million to spend on innovation projects, you'd likely blow $100 million on innovation projects and not have to show for what you could by having a lot less in resources. And I say that having seen organizations do that. Constraints help you de-risk the idea, make sure that you're going in the right direction, and do the fundamental steps of interacting with customers and making sure that whatever you're creating is of value to them. It has never in our lives been easier to put in a full 9-to-5 day of work and accomplish nothing of value for customers. And that will only become a greater and greater challenge. So just working hard isn't going to be enough anymore. Are we doing things that are creating value and helping us move faster? And I think COVID in that way was a gift to show us what we are capable of. And let's not lose those lessons of what we are capable of doing and how quickly we are capable of moving when we have to, and to be able to move that quickly when we don't have those kinds of pressures around. Like, that's what separates one credit union from other financial institutions that they compete with.
Absolutely. Okay. So a little bit of fun. I want to be respectful of your time here, but we have some rapid fire questions that your answers don't have to be rapid though. So just the questions are, but when was the last time you were personally amazed?
Well, I have been playing around with Chat GPT. I don't know if your listeners
have I. Yeah, just recently
heard. And I love showing it to other professionals who are like, that's not for me. It is so mind blowing and so amazing. And using it trying to find new ways to use it has been what has given me the most amazement in the last month.
I feel like I've been doing the same thing just over the past few days. And if you looked at the randomness of what I've been asking it, it probably would be funny to look at if I took a screenshot of the site, because it's just like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Let's just pause there for just a second and say to anybody who's listening, who's like heard of it or not heard of it, this is such a monumental shift. Here's a perfect example of innovation that's going to happen to us. And technology that has the ability to make so many of our existing processes faster, and to help serve our members in faster, better ways. And yet, I think so many professionals are completely ignoring it.
I have to give a shout out to a former guest on the show, Mary Beth Spunk, and I was at a conference with her and we were having a drink just a couple of weeks ago and she brought it up to me and was like, this will blow your mind. I was instantly, I'm like, so yeah, it's been right there. So people should check it out. So I've found in myself at times in my career, and I know talking to a lot of, other leaders out there, sometimes, that A-type personality or the drive to succeed or whatever you want to can kind of get in the way of personal relationships as well. So any hacks on finding that balance? I don't like to use the word work-life balance, but that in life that you found to make sure that all of our buckets are full.
I think you have to create the space for it, just how we started. So I'll give you a little silly one, but my husband and I have been doing this team meeting at the end of every day. And TEAM stands T for touch. You just hold hands. E is education, something you learned throughout the day. A for appreciation, something you appreciate about the other person. And M for memories. We both have a little widget on our phones that shows us old photos. And we just sit and go through those. And that little 5 to 10 minutes together creates, connection. That's really important.
That is a beautiful idea. I like that. What's the best piece of advice you ever received? And who gave it to you?
This might be too personal. I have a ghost mentor.
A ghost mentor?
A ghost, a lot of people have living mentors. I have a mentor who I never met, but I read his books, and he's from Kansas City, where I'm from. He started a very successful organization. His name is Ewing Kauffman. And his best piece of advice to me was, you should never take a job. You should always make a job. And so even when one is available that you're considering, still create what the ideal of that position would look like for you, and then see if you can create that.
So this kind of ties into my next one. I'm a big fan of having a mission, not necessarily a job. So do you have a personal mission statement? What is it that makes you do what you do?
To hunt and kill zombies in the world. And I'll share more about that at the event. But to find those things that are not serving us, that we feel a lot of responsibility to keep going, but we don't have to. And I just know from personal experience how good it feels to put down those things that are not serving us and free up our time to work on things that make us happier, more passionate, more fulfilled, and help our organizations.
Oh, I love that you are teasing this Mini-Con event. Well, too, people are gonna have to come. Random question: what's the greatest album of all time? That one you can listen to.
Oh well, I feel like this is Taylor Swift's new album. That every song on the album was on the Billboard 100 at the same time, right in the top 10.
Absolutely, that's for sure. She seems to be able to do no wrong. We'll link to both of your books in the show note. You have the Curiosity Muscle, which I'm really excited to read. I just ordered it, and the All in Startup was your other one. Beyond those books, and we'll probably give a few of those away at the Mini-Con event as well. What else are you currently reading? And is there a book that you've gifted or you just think everybody should read?
I think that no matter where you are in your career, the most important way for you to learn and advance is through your network. And there's a really old book that I get a lot of value from still called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And it's really how to create real meaningful relationships with your professional contacts. And I think if we could do that with our own network and also in our credit union's relationship with our members, we'll be successful forever.
Absolutely. Who plays Diana in the movie biopic of your life?
Oh, My husband, because I'm a refugee from the Soviet Union, so my husband and I always joke that it's Mila Kunis, who's from that 70s show, who also came from the Soviet Union.
Awesome. That's fantastic. It's awesome that you had that right on the top of your head. When you hear the word success, who is the first person who comes to mind and why?
Oh, it's my parents. They came here and they got jobs at TJ Maxx and Pizza Hut. And when I was in middle school, they started a business making crowns for people's teeth, like a dental laboratory, for dentists. And now, this is like 25 years, 30 years later, it's incredibly successful. They've gone from the bottom income bracket to the top income bracket. And my parents, their business has no website, no marketing materials, but it's all based on relationship and the quality of the work that they do. And they're able to employ 18, 20 families that they can provide for. It's just like an incredible success story. And I got a front row seat to it. So
I'm sure that rubbed off on you as well, right? That entrepreneurial side. So the last question that I had, any final thoughts or anything you were hoping that I was going to ask you that I didn't, that you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I find you to be a very curious person. And I love the rapid nature of how quickly you came up with the questions.
Yeah, well, thank you. This has been so much fun. I can't wait for Mini-Con. I can't wait to hear more. And I look forward to reading your book. I wish I would have got it beforehand, but I've been on the road and hadn't got one. So, and there you go. So thanks so much for being here. If people want to get a hold of you, what's your poison? Twitter, LinkedIn? How do you like people reaching out if they want more of you?
LinkedIn is where I post regular content that is more strategic in nature, and Instagram is where you can see progress on my splits and all the other fun things that happen in my life.
We will link to both of those. That is so awesome, and good luck on your splits.
Thank you so much. I'll give an update, at the event.
At the event, we could find out how far along you are on reaching that goal. So again, thanks so much for doing this today. I greatly appreciate you taking the time. We will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes, including your books, so people should go out and buy those as well. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you soon at the event.
I can't wait.
A few things before we go. Make sure to check out Allied Solutions. They're our sponsor of the show. You can find them in the show notes as well. They have over 40 years experience helping protect credit unions and are a longtime partner of CUInsight.com and the podcast. So I'm grateful for their support because I get to have this much fun doing what I do. Please also subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We're on them all. And if you're looking for the books mentioned, like Diana's, you can check out the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and your next read can be on its way from Amazon. Last but certainly not least, thank you all for listening. Y'all rock. I appreciate the kind words that come in about the show. Be well, friends, and I hope to see you all again soon.